Hey y'all, what's up? It has been a while since Logan came out, and it has actually been a while since I myself have seen it. It's been a couple of days already, but I loved it immensely and I really want to share some of my thoughts on it, so here we go. Now, unless you have been living under a rock, you know that Logan is the newest installment in the X-Men film franchise, and is the third and final installment in the Wolverine standalone films. Now, these three films shouldn't really be considered so much a trilogy, as rather different attempts at trying to give this one character his proper standalone film, with the first one being a complete misfire. It's complete and utter garbage, it's shit. The second one being considered by most to be okay-ish, but I myself wasn't really a big fan of that one either. I actually disliked it quite a lot. And this third one being considered one of the greatest superhero movies ever made. A film that completely defies genre conventions, a groundbreaking film for superhero-based movies. In a nutshell, the plot takes place in 2029. It is alleged that most of mutants are gone, no new mutants have been born for the past 15 years, so they are pretty much going extinct, and Logan is working as a driver for hire somewhere close to the border of Mexico. He is attempting to hide from the world and to hide from his legacy. In typical Logan fashion, he is drinking heavily, he appears to be ill, he appears to be pretty much past his prime, and he is caring for an even older and even more ailing Professor X, along with another mutant, Caliban. Professor X's mind is constantly plagued by worsening seizures. His mind has been considered by the government to be a weapon of mass destruction, so Logan and Caliban are trying their damnedest to keep Professor X hidden, to keep him under control, to keep his mind under control, using different medications and sedatives. So it's all pretty much doom and gloom until one day they cross paths with a little girl, a young mutant who is being hunted by mischievous forces. So Logan has this quest of getting her to safety. The claws come out again for one last mission. We get a kick-ass action movie with a lot of heart and a lot of emotion as well that will leave you sobbing at the end like a little girl or a little boy. So like I said, I love this movie, I think it's very good, but I might disagree a little bit for why a lot of critics are considering this to be so good, and that is that they consider it to be groundbreaking. Now, I don't really know what's so groundbreaking about it. It might be considered to be something new when compared to other X-Men films or to other superhero movies in general, but really this film, on the contrary, from the very get-go, lets you know that it's a road movie, and that it's the sort of this homage paid to westerns. There is a scene in the film, it's one of the very few scenes that has levity. There's not a lot of them in this film, but there are a couple in which our characters are watching a very famous western. I can't remember the title of it because I haven't seen it, shame on me, but a line from that very same film is uttered later on in the film as well, so it is pretty clear that this is sort of like a western with Wolverine in it. Story-wise as well, this is really not something that we haven't seen before. I mean, this is the type of story where our main characters in the beginning are trying to keep a low profile, trying to not be discovered. They are discovered by their enemies, they are attacked, they manage to escape, they go to another destination, they are eventually discovered there as well, they are attacked again, they escape again, and this all happens a couple of times, and the main objective is to get someone to safety. Sacrifices are made along the way, lessons are learned, people learn to care about each other, and that's basically it. It's very, very, very simple. But I think the film works so well and is so incredibly endearing precisely because it is not trying to be anything incredibly flashy and spectacle-like. It's very simple and focuses in on this relationship between these three main characters basically, and the dynamic between them, and the way that dynamic changes and shifts, like the way people's roles change in relation to one another. Because let's not forget, in the beginning of the series, it was actually Professor X who reached out to Logan, who accepted him, who wanted to take him in and help him, and who believed in him when no one else did. And here in this film, it's completely the other way around. It is Logan, the one guy who always considered himself to be the lone wolf, who always wanted to be completely independent and to not have anything to do with anyone else. He is the last man standing. He is the last one who still believes in Charles, who is still able to help him, to care for him. I think that's an incredible arc for Logan, especially not just in this movie, but in the whole series as well. I think that was a very good idea to make this last movie with these two characters with this story in mind. It was a very good idea. And speaking of not trying to be anything incredibly flashy or spectacle-like, the action in this movie, man, it feels so incredibly grounded and small scale that I really couldn't believe my eyes, especially when considering the last X-Men movie that came out last year, X-Men Apocalypse, which was a complete CGI crap fest. This is is on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. And what I loved about this as well is that while in the last X-Men movie we had the same like boring situation we have in most superhero movies, where we have a villain who wants to destroy the world, so our superheroes come and save it. But my main problem with that was that I never actually considered the X-Men to be superheroes necessarily, as much as they are, I think, superhumans whose main objective is not so much to save the world as it is to look out for each other, to look out for each other's backs, and to collaborate, and to be a part of this team. And I think that element of the X-Men mythos is brought back to this film Logan in an incredibly successful way. It was actually an element I wasn't completely on board with in the beginning of the film, to be honest. When I saw that this little girl showed up and I realized that the whole film is going to be about Logan trying to take care of this little girl and get her to safety, I was a little skeptical. I was like, are we really doing this right now? But it works so incredibly well, not only because Daphne Keane, who plays Laura, I think her name is in the film, is so incredibly talented and such a badass. It also works very well because the explanation for her character's existence in this universe is very interesting. It really adds a lot of lore to this universe and a lot of potential for further explanation, for potential sequels, and her character is really not written in a way that she appears to be nothing more than just another simple sidekick. No, she is very much an integral part of the story. I dug it. Another thing I really dug about the film is its meta-ness. I probably just made that word up. And what I mean by that is that the old school X-Men comic books with the old school versions of the characters exists in Logan, exists in this universe, in this film. And I found it to be incredibly cool. I don't think I ever seen that in another superhero movie until now. It's basically, I think, an attempt by the film to acknowledge and to pay respect to its source material by saying that, hey, remember that universe with those versions of the characters? Well, that exists in this universe with these versions of the characters as well. And even though that universe is fictional in this universe, I find that the two like complemented each other incredibly well and really had its purpose in the story. So yay! But the one thing I didn't dug about the film and I had gripes with is that the film unfortunately lacks a strong villain, lacks a strong antagonist, and that's kind of a shame because Richard E. Grant is in this film and he's a great actor, but he's basically playing typical scientist dude with an evil agenda. And I think that's kind of a shame because I think that the X-Men films in general lack strong villains. I mean, of course you can argue that Magneto, especially the version played by Ian McKellen, is amazing, and it is, but Magneto I never viewed as 100% villain. I mean, especially in the course of the whole series, sometimes he changes sides. He's not 100% villain. I mean, they tried to have one villain that was all villainous with Apocalypse in the last movie, failed miserably in my humble opinion. So yeah, the villains in this film, like I said, they're either like evil scientist dude, henchman, some mutant like cooked up in some lab, and they are taken out in the film, I think, pretty easily in my opinion, and they don't really feel like they're posing like a serious threat. So yeah, if I had one big problem with the film, it was kind of this, that kind of lacked strong villains. So that will be it in a nutshell. I mean, this film, very good. Performances, very good. The action, also very good. I really like that it was so grounded and small scale. There wasn't an overabundance of CGI. I really like that the film is not trying desperately to connect with the other films in the timeline. There are no flashbacks to any of the other films. Like really, it's almost kind of confusing to think about like how does this film connect to the other films in the timeline. There are like a whole bunch of videos on YouTube on it, and there are a lot of different theories that are very interesting. But I like that this film really functions as more or less a standalone film. This is a superhero movie I can pretty much recommend to anybody. You really don't have to be familiar with the X-Men. You really don't have to be familiar with superheroes in general, because this works so well as a road movie, as a western, and as a very emotional journey, and that has Wolverine in it. And Wolverine is one of the biggest badasses in cinema ever. And what can I say? I highly recommend it. If you haven't seen it already, you probably have, so my review is completely and utterly pointless, but there you go. Oh, and one thing I forgot to mention, and it might seem like something incredibly trivial, but trust me, it is not. The film is R-rated. That means that the very first word that comes out of Logan's mouth in the film is fuck. And there are a whole lot of F-bombs dropped in the film. There's a lot of blood, which I cannot tell you how satisfying that was to see on the screen, because you see, Wolverine has claws. Claws cut. When you are cut, you bleed. And people are not just bleed out. People not just are cut to shreds by Wolverine and Laura. They also they are blown up, they are burnt, they are shot in the face. The film is very violent, and finally we got to see it. We got to see a violent Wolverine film. Man, I couldn't have asked for anything more. I'm a happy boy. So those were my thoughts on Logan. What I want to ask you guys is, what is your favorite superhero movie? Simple question, don't forget to leave your answer down below. And if you enjoyed this review, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe so I can see you later with other reviews. Until then folks, stay cool, stay awesome, goodbye.